naked while Terminator music plays in background. Done, ticked off the bucket list. Okay, on to today's show. So today's video is all about float tanks, also known as sensory deprivation tanks or isolation tanks. And I first heard of these through the Joe Rogan podcast because myself, like a bazillion other people on the planet, I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that I've talked about here on the channel, stuff like DMT or ayahuasca, is things that I first heard about through the Joe Rogan podcast. So Joe bigs up float tanks a lot. He talks about having one in the basement of his house, and he bigs up the medical benefits from how it helps him recover from working out at the gym. But he's also talked about how you can have these psychedelic experiences in them just from being in the float tank. And again, he's talked about some other stuff about eating edibles and then getting in the float tank. But the thing I wanted to focus on is this first claim. Can you have a psychedelic experience in a float tank? Now I'm going to put a little quick disclaimer in here. I fully acknowledge that if you are some kind of, Zen meditation master, some guy who spent, 3 months in silence in a cave, or you're some kind of Kundalini yoga master, then yes, you can have a psychedelic experience in a float tank. In fact, you could probably have a psychedelic experience anywhere. I'm not that guy. I'm just your average smoke. So what I'm trying to work out is, for someone like me, your average guy, I'm no meditation master, I'm not any kind of mystic or any kind of guru. Someone like me, can you have a psychedelic experience within a float tank? So there's only one way to find out. I'm going to head on over to my nearest float tank centre. I've booked myself a session, and yeah, let's see what it's all about. The place I went to do this was the Float Centre in Zurich, which is basically a kind of health spa. And they've got a couple of different options there. They have pools where you can float with your partner if you want to, or they have these fully encapsulated pods. And I chose the pods because I wanted this feeling of total isolation. So as you can see, the place itself is really nice. It's a very relaxing atmosphere. You have your own private room with your own private bathroom and changing room to get ready. And yeah, and here you can see the float tank. So just to give a better look at the pod, sort of inside here, these things here, we've got some controls on the side, one for opening and closing the lid, one for turning a light on and off. There's an emergency button over here. There's another button that controls some ambient music. But yeah, I say it's pretty big. It's definitely couldn't fit one of these easily in my apartment. Now the liquid that's inside the tank is not just regular water. It's got this huge amount of Epsom salts tipped into it, and that's what gives it this extra buoyancy, which gives you this sensation of floating. The other thing about it that's a little bit strange is that when you're sat in it, it feels kind of slimy, almost like you're sat in a bath of pure olive oil, which I know sounds a little bit weird, but it's actually very comfortable when you're in there. There's also a kind of an acrid tang in the air. You can, particularly once the tank's closed, you can sort of like taste the salt in the atmosphere. There's a little sort of caustic edge to it. Once you get into your room, you strip off, shower off, and then you're ready to get into your pod. You climb in, and then when you press a button to close the lid, that's when the timer starts. So as soon as that lid shuts, that's where your hour begins. And if you open the lid again, the timer doesn't stop. It starts after that first closure of the lid. Now the water and the temperature of the air inside the tank are heated to the same temperature. So the idea here is that you should not be able to feel the difference between the water and the air. So you get this true feeling of kind of like anti-gravity, just floating in nothingness. And yeah, that's exactly how it feels. You stop noticing the barrier between water and air. It just feels like you're just there. So on to the $1 million question. What was the experience like, and was it psychedelic? So what was the experience like? Yeah, I mean, I love this experience. It's just so relaxing. You're in there, it's all warm and cozy. It's like you're in this giant kind of artificial womb. It's, yeah, a really good experience, and I would definitely recommend it. Was it psychedelic? Well, it's definitely more psychedelic than you just being awake. But I mean, is it comparable to something like psilocybin or ayahuasca? Definitely not. It's nowhere near that kind of powerful experience. A few weird things did happen. There was one part I had my eyes open, and because it's so dark, you can't tell, even if you've got your eyes open or closed, it's the same darkness. But there was one moment where this kind of weird texture sort of seemed to appear, which didn't seem kind of the normal sort of thing that happens when I close my eyes. And the other thing that was a bit strange, time went so fast. I did not think I was in there for maybe like 15 minutes. And then the lights flashed and the tank opened and I checked the timer, and yeah, I'd been in there an hour. So that passage of time was a really strange thing, kind of like a time dilation effect. But yeah, as far as like, you know, a classic, what I would call a psychedelic experience, I'd have to say no. Now, I suppose that leads then to the next question of what would it be like with a psychedelic? You know, say if you took some mushrooms or took some edibles or something and then went in the tank. And I thought about this, and honestly, I don't think it would be a good idea. The main reason being that you have to be extremely still when you're in there, because otherwise the water will kind of like splash over your face. And if you get that stuff in your mouth, it's so salty. I mean, it's not even just normal salt. It tastes pretty foul. And yeah, I think you'd have to be extremely disciplined to be able to sit in there and keep yourself so still for it to be a kind of a useful tool to add to the experience. Now, again, I fully acknowledge that if you were that guy, if you were that disciplined and you could take some mushrooms or something and then get in there and just sit there perfectly still and not get the splashes anywhere and not freak out and press the wrong buttons, yeah, you might have a good time. But personally, I wouldn't try that. The other thing that kind of came to mind with being in there is with it being so enclosed, and whenever I'm on psychedelics, they kind of make me want to like purge out my back end. And so yeah, I don't think that sort of like sitting there and farting in this, you know, closed spaces would just be a pleasant experience. So for me, I don't think it would be a good idea to do psychedelics or do some edibles and get in there. That's just me. So to summarize, really enjoyable, really relaxing, definitely recommend it, but not really a psychedelic experience, at least not for me, the average Joe. So that's it for this video. I hope you found that useful. And as always, if you like what you see here on Adeptus Psychonautica, then please like and subscribe. And for those who want to financially support the channel, you can now do so by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee icon up in the banner on my YouTube channel. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you next time.